Welcome to Today in Prophecy, daily news in 15 minutes or less, news from a biblical perspective. A lot going on here. It's time to sell the U.S. dollar, says Morgan Stanley. Sweden is mulling social media age limit to stop gangs recruiting young people. Erdogan rises in the Mideast. And I'm sure some of you have seen this. The Pope, he unveils baby Jesus in a kepha. I'm looking at this going, and more. We're going to get to Israel here in just a second too, but you're going, what in the world is going on with all of these different dynamics? Well, let's start here. I want to go to Syria and the issues going on there. Check this out. Syria has a new flag already. Images of Syria's opposition flag raised at the embassy in Russia. The three-starred flag of the Syrian rebel groups has been installed over the Syrian embassy building in Moscow. I'm looking at all of the different dynamics. Listen, everything going on in Syria is getting worse and worse and worse. We showed you the short video yesterday in our news clip regarding these rebels saying, hey, we are coming for Jerusalem. We're coming to fight for your freedom down in Gaza. So you're looking at this. Israel is heavily involved in this. Also, this is showing up. A lot more of this is on the news. Israel is bombing a lot of different areas in Syria, destroying chemical weapons and equipment. There's even some people that are saying, hey, you can smell chemicals in the air. As we look at this, I want you to think back. I've talked about this several times in the last week, including just yesterday. When you look back and you look at Damascus, Damascus has been known for years as this area where chemical weapons were stored, biological weapons were stored. It was John Kerry who said it back in 2013. But then when the Trump administration came along, those things weren't allowed to be talked about anymore. Well, Israel is always known this is a huge problem. Will this lead to the destruction of Damascus? As I've mentioned yesterday, and again, I did a message on that on Sunday evening. You can check it out in my prophecy update. But listen, things are really bad as we look at what's going on in Syria and the rebel threats, not just in Syria, but also to Israel, and the problems that Iran and Russia and Turkey are having. And of course, I already read the one title to the one article, Erdogan rises in the Mideast. Erdogan, the president of Turkey, all these different dynamics. But as you look at this with the flag being raised over the Russian embassy, again, Russia is not going to be putting up with this. So it's going to be interesting to see how this develops. I think it's going to get a lot uglier real soon. As Donna from Canada had emailed me about it, she said, obviously, the takeover of Syria was well planned. They knew that they could do it because they had manufactured thousands of flags. Or else, how and when did they have the time to make the new flags already? Obviously, they prepared them in advance. Some Syrian Canadians have taken to the streets with the new flags already, celebrating. The news is going on and on about how brutal of a dictator Assad was to his own people, and yet we never saw any protests anywhere since it was known quite some time ago. Why wasn't the UN screaming about it? Where were the ICC arrest warrants? Absolutely. You look at this, you go, what in the world's really going on in Syria? I don't want to mention too much on this. However, I do have someone who's pretty well informed. He told me, look, this whole operation that's been going on in Syria, it has the U.S. hands written all over it. The CIA has their fingerprints all over the things that are taking place there in Syria. So listen, folks, it is getting worse and worse. But what is Israel going to do? I've been saying this over and over again, that there has to come a time of peace over in the Mideast. Israel has to be assured of peace to the point where they will lay down their weapons. We are not there yet, but it would not surprise me at all if we see the fulfillment of Isaiah chapter 17. Maybe my friend Bill Salas is right too. This is going to lead to the Psalm 83 war. Israel is only 20 miles from Damascus too, or 20 kilometers from Damascus, and even closer by right now as we're reporting this. But I'm looking at all of these different dynamics. We're going to come back to Syria in just a minute, talk about Israel and how much they are pressing into Syria, just amazing. Is Bill Salas right about Psalm 83? Sure makes you wonder, doesn't it? Isaiah chapter 17, is that coming? Listen, something's got to come out of this. You look at this, and I'm telling you, it looks like this whole thing's about ready to blow and get really, really ugly real soon. Let's move on from here. We'll come back to that in a couple more minutes. But here's out of Market Watch. It's time to sell the U.S. dollar, Morgan Stanley says. Investors are overwhelmingly bullish on the U.S. dollar. In the view of Morgan Stanley's analysts, that means it's time to sell. Morgan Stanley's analyst, led by David Adams, explained that investors are broadly expecting to see a rise in the value of the U.S. dollar in the foreseeable future compared to rival currencies, including the euro, the Australian dollar, and the British pound. Interesting, we look at that article in light of Trump presidency, the election, and how the dynamics of so many different things have changed. Now countries are saying, hey, we want to pour money into the U.S. We want to invest. We see the dollar is going to go up. Listen, when things go up, when do you sell? You wait until they're at the top. That's when you sell them. You don't sell them when they're here and they're going to go up. Who would do something like that, no matter what it is? So these people know what they're doing. That's how they got rich, and they know to sell when it's at the top and buy when it's low. So interesting to watch the dynamics of what's going on with this and people showing favor to the U.S. again. But man, as we look at all of the different dynamics at the same time, we have everything screaming, hey, there's going to be an economic catastrophe. There's going to be an economic collapse. All of these different dynamics are in play. And as we watch Syria, that adds a whole lot more to all of the things that are taking place right now. Sweden mulling social media age limit to stop gangs from recruiting young people. From Stockholm, ministers in Sweden's government are considering imposing age limits on social media platforms if tech companies find themselves unable to prevent gangs from recruiting young people online to carry out murders and bombings in the Nordics. Interesting, as we look at this also in the light of the Bible, what does Jesus himself said in Matthew chapter 24, one of the things that will escalate in the understanding of birth pains upon a pregnant woman with frequency and intendency is lawlessness, wars and rumors of wars, economic threats of economic catastrophe, lawlessness, all of these things growing more and more frequent and much bigger of a problem. And you look at this coming out of Sweden, and it just is just another reminder of the days that we live in and how fast everything is moving forward. Moving on from there, with Assad's fall, Erdogan sees Turkey's growing regional clout. Of all the winners and losers from Syria's sudden change of power, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan stands out as among those with the most to gain. Erdogan's clout over a southern neighbor has increased dramatically with the fall of his one-time friend Bashar al-Assad, bolstering his political standing at home and in the international arena. Erdogan is regarded as a hero by thousands of Syrian rebels who succeeded in overthrowing Assad with Turkey's help. Wow. As well as many among the millions of refugees who were given safe haven in Turkey when the Syrian war broke out in 2011. Folks, you look at this and go, okay, how involved was Turkey in this? When at the same time, we know Russia, Turkey, and Iran met just last week. What do we do with the Syrian problem? This article is saying, hey, this is what's going on. Turkey was part of the ousting of Assad in order for Turkey to have control over in Syria because they partnered with the rebels. I mean, you look at all of these different things that are taking place, and it almost makes your head spin. Everything is moving so fast. We don't know exactly what shoe is going to drop next. We don't know exactly what's going to happen and how it's all going to come about. But we do know that God is in control and God's prophetic time clock is moving forward. Think of this. In Daniel chapter 9, verse 24, the angel tells Daniel, 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city to finish transgression, make an end of all sins, bring in all righteousness, seal up vision and prophecy. In other words, all of the prophecies of the Bible regarding the second coming of Christ will be fulfilled. Seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. What's that? That's speaking about Jesus returning and ruling and reigning in Jerusalem. The 70 weeks are determined for your city, for your holy city and your people. The holy city is Jerusalem, and the Jews are the people that are spoken of there, to make an end of all of the wickedness here on this earth, bring in the kingdom of Christ. But that word for determined in the Hebrew, it literally means it is settled. Daniel, God wants you to know 70 weeks are settled, and this is going to be the outcome. And we know as you read the book of Daniel, the 69 weeks have already been done. We have one final week, 1 7-year period. That's what it means there in Daniel. 1 7-year period, the tribulation period, that it is settled this 70th week, the final 7-year period, must happen, Daniel, in order to bring an end to all of the sin. And the focus is going to be on the holy city of Jerusalem and the Jews. Again, when we've talked about this before, when we think back to October 7, 2023, when we have Hamas and they come into Israel and they start slaughtering people in Nova and the kibbutzim that are surrounding the area of Gaza. They've taken hostages, still have them. What did they say? They called it the Al-Aqsa flood. What's the Al-Aqsa? That's the mosque on top of the Temple Mount. They know it's about Jerusalem. Now the rebel groups in Syria are saying, hey, this is about Jerusalem. We are coming to Jerusalem. What's Erdogan? He's partnering with the rebels? Wow, you look at that. And what's Erdogan also? He may be the worst, most anti-Semitic world ruler that there is right now, at least known that there is right now. The Antichrist isn't exposed yet for who he is. But with Erdogan, you look at that, he's anti-Semitic. His target has been on Jerusalem for a long, long, long time. So you look at all of this. They know, the terror groups know, the leaders of Turkey know, this is about Jerusalem. Iran knows this is about Jerusalem, and Russia is about to admit it's about Jerusalem. But so we know the attention's going to go to Jerusalem. So as we see all of these different things come out, pay attention to the fine print. They're all talking about Jerusalem. The world will finally catch on, and the world will turn against Jerusalem. But Zechariah chapter 12 lets us know that the world will see Jerusalem as a stumbling stone, and the whole world, and the whole world will stumble over it. All right, can't stop here. Let's bring the Pope into this, because Pope Francis unveils baby Jesus in a kippah. You look at this. So this is for the nativity scene. Folks, I'm going to do a message just on this, because this is just unbelievable. What the Pope is basically saying is Jesus was a Palestinian. I'm going to tell you something right now. This is an absolute lie. Jesus was not a Palestinian. The term Palestine wasn't even invented. It's an invented word. It wasn't invented until 100 years after Jesus died on the cross and then rose from the grave. And there's people out there that are saying since Jesus was born in Bethlehem, therefore, Jesus was a Palestinian, because Bethlehem is now in what the UN calls Palestinian territory. Listen, I call it Judea. As Judea and Samaria, it's not the West Bank. Bethlehem is in the area of Judea. It's a Jewish province. Again, the word Palestine wasn't invented until 135 AD by Hadrian, who sought to destroy the Jews and humiliate them. And he changed the name of Judea and Samaria to Syria, Palestina, also known in English as Palestine. And the very first people ever called Palestinians were the Jews living in Judea, living in Bethlehem. It was the Jews. And when Jesus was born, I want you to think of this. Herod comes along 18 months after Jesus is born, or somewhere right around there. He tells the wise men, hey, the Magi that came from the east, tell me where this person is, the King of the Jews, that I may worship him. He didn't want to worship him. He wanted to kill him. And he had all the baby boys in Bethlehem slaughtered because they were Jewish. They weren't Palestinian. Think of that. That's in your Bible. Slaughtered them because they are Jewish. Listen, I have many more things I'd like to tell you right now, but I don't have enough time. Just got back from Texas, literally like minutes ago, just before we started this. God bless you guys in Texas. What a great place that is. I miss it already, but I'm glad to be back here with you guys. I'll be back here again tomorrow. God bless you. See you then.